Alright, so welcome back to a new video. Today I just have a little and sweet video for you guys, since I will recap the first half of the France game. Now I have never done a video about a singular half before. However, with the fact that this game already has been going on for about 4 months now, and is nowhere close to ending, I thought that, why not get some of you up to speed, as personally, I felt that I forgot a couple of things as time moved on. So yeah, I hope that you will enjoy this, and I saw some people worrying, but I will of course make another one when the full game is over. But anyway, that's enough of me, so let's head in. Starting off this game, we see the lineup for the match against France and Japan. Here we can see that the mysterious new Gen 11 Hugo is playing as a center midfielder and more of a defensive one. And for Blue Lock, they are going ahead with the same lineup that they used in the last half against Nigeria, which as long as Chigiri is in, I'm happy with, but it's a bit of a rogue play. The text then says, it's time for round 3 of the U20 World Cup's Group A. It's almost time for the kickoff between Japan and France. After that, we see the commentators, and starting with Teriyasa, who asks Natsuki what kind of team the U20 France team actually is. Natsuki has a huge grin on himself as he says that, to put it simply, they're the favorite to win, explaining that their national team is the reigning World Cup champion. And the U20 team led by Loki are called the Golden Generation, who'll secure France's future for the next 10 years. Teriyasa says that he understands and continues by saying that, and challenging that mighty team is Japan. Blue Lock's members have caused an absolute sensation, and they dominated Nigeria 4-0 in round 1, and we see the crowd being absolutely ecstatic as this is happening. Anyway, they continue and says that finally, Isagi is fast becoming a symbol of this generation. Right now, the soccer team with the most attention is Blue Lock Japan and the Egoist team, and today they're sporting their fresh white alternate uniforms. And while on that topic, just look at those uniforms. I'm not gonna lie, but they are way more sick than what they are usually wearing. After that, they are obviously walking out and walking side by side. To Isagi's side is Loki, who looks over at Isagi and tells him that they meet again and calls him an egotist. Isagi looks at him with a determined face as he tells him hello and calls him Wonderkind. After that, we see Charles looking around and around, but he is quickly confused, and he then asks if Shidu isn't starting today either. Bachira looks super wholesome as he says that he's on the bench. Charles then gives him a pretty strange face while telling him that if that's the case, then he guesses that they are going to wipe the floor with them, and he then says a demon emoji like that wild guy usually does. Bachira hits him back, but I have no idea what is coming out of his mouth. Anyway, after that, Rin walks by, and he tells Charles to just keep running his mouth and calls him a contrarian, and he continues as he tells him to get ready for a broken nose. Charles makes some sort of mocking facial expression behind Rin before telling him that the same goes to him and calls him beastie. After that, we get to Isagi, who is having to try and look at Loki, who's jumping up and down like he's in a bouncy castle. But Isagi thinks that whoever wins will get as close as possible to the finals, telling himself to convert this pressure into defiance. With that, both of them look at each other fiercely, and the text says that the match between the highly anticipated teams in the group league, Japan versus France, kicks off, which it sure does, as Loki passes the ball to none other than Hugo, who looks super depressed and dead inside as he tells them to get ready. A bit off topic, but in this game, I hope that we learn a bit more about the no-names since they looked pretty cool. Anyway, back to the topic, where we see Hugo telling them to zoom and zoom. They do as they all rush upwards on the field with no sign of slowing down. Isagi looks extremely confused, but it's far from him, as it's also Bachira and Karasu, who both can't believe what is going on. Loki then seems to be sprinting behind Isagi, as all of the French team are fully focused on sprinting into enemy territory. After that, Hugo says nice, and he then starts to move with the ball, and it's something with the way that he dashes that looks so insanely cool. Anyway, he tries to go past Isagi, which, well, doesn't seem to be much of a trouble, but Rin then comes and tries to do something. But that's when Hugo puts his hand out and is able to shove him all the way out of reach. This makes Rin get visibly annoyed as he really looks angry. We then get to Isagi, who's just lost and who can't believe anything that is going down, as he is just left thinking that Hugo managed to dribble right past him. After that, he screams out to all of the Blue Lock players and he tells them all not to let Hugo pass. We then move on to Hiyori, who looks extremely locked in, and he says that he already knows that, but he thinks that there are too many danger spots to protect, and he calls it utterly impossible, as we understandably sees as the France team has countless of their players pretty decently free. Hugo's eye then looks like it does something interesting, but it's hard to say anyway. He says beep 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 and focus, which yeah man, don't ask me what that guy has been smoking on to say that out of the blue. But with his saying out of the way, he fires off an insane pass, and this panel is kinda hard to see, so I'm not sure if this is a nutmeg on Rio, but I don't think so, but it might be. We then move back to Isagi, who looks absolutely blown away as he says that Hugo is passing right up on the field and towards none other than Loki. But just then, as Loki is running with all that he can, he suddenly gets hit by the triple block. Aiku, who is in front of him, asks Loki if the pass isn't for him, and he continues with a slight smirk, saying that anyone else is just the bait. Nico adds on by saying that it's as clear as day, and Ryu tells him that they won't let him style through, and Heike, that sounded pretty cool. But we then move back to Loki, who surprisingly he doesn't look fazed by this in the slightest, as he just simply calls it too bad, and tells the contrarian to come on, and that leaves all three of the blue lock defenders pretty shocked. But we later see that the ball that was headed to Loki, it got intercepted by Charles, and he has a huge grin on himself as he says that he is sneaking in. Aiku's eyes gets huge as he is starting to question everything, and he says that Loki rushed in to lure their attention while he crossed behind, saying that the pinpoint pass turned into a nasty, unexpected gremlin shot. And bro, what is with this aura? Because this is on another level. It feels like I've been glazing this chapter so much, but the gremlin aura has to legit be top 3 because it's so insane. Anyway, Charles obviously shoots the ball, and Isagi is looking at it like there's no tomorrow as he thinks that their teamwork is unreal and says that their very first attack transcended their thinking and that Blue Lock's entire system got crushed. And he finally realized that this is the true power of France and why they are the favorite to win. And with that, the ball goes into the goal with ease. So sadly, the GOAT Gagamaru was unable to do his miracles this time, and it led to France getting the first goal. We then move to Loki, who calls it a nice shot. Charles looks like he is on heavy drugs as always, as he says gotcha. And after that, Hugo, who is kind of destroying the vibe a bit, says that it's destiny. So we then right away see the aftermath of Charles's goal, and the crowd goes absolutely nuts as they see it. The commentators say that it's a declaration of war, a rapid-fire attack, and a one-shot kill. We also get a small cameo from Ego, who is sitting on the bench looking half dead. The commentators continues as they say that this is a magnificent showing from France with their very first attack, and that Charles Chevalier has seized the initiative. After that, we see Loki kind of trying to aura farm a bit as he simply gives a thumb up to the crowd. Meanwhile, Charles right away runs to Hugo and jumps right onto his back. We then switch sides and go to the better side, which of course is Blue Lock, and Ryu just says, damn, which is kind of a vibe. After that, we see Aiku, who's dragging his hand through his hair and says that France is insane and that they totally fell for their ploy. Nico says that their pattern just now wasn't in the data that they had gathered, and Karasu says that the speed, the cross run, and the shot quality, saying that you can explain it logically, but that goal wouldn't have been possible without incredible skill and talent. Explains that this is the absurd might of their generation's top team and also Loki's French team, which is, as we already know, the favorite to win. However, after that, someone comes by and claps his hands. We see that it's the chameleon Rio, who tells them all to chill, tells them that France made an experimental surprise attack, and that there were aspects that they couldn't respond to, saying that what France really wants is to rattle them, and in turn, make them throw themselves off their game. Rio looks serious, even though you might not believe it with his panel, but he tells them to cool down their brains and not lose their heads. Aiku goes, fist bumps him, and says that he's right, and calls it nice mental management, calling Rio brain boss. Rio just says that he's got it, and Bachira then bows his head as he thanks Rio for the mental medicine, and Gagamaru also bows his head and agrees with Bachira. After that, we see someone coming by and saying that Rio's right, and that they have just started. It's the GOAT, Isagi, who says that they have planned for when they are a point behind and to just focus on playing their way of soccer. Hiyori looks at him with a smirk and tells him, alright, and calls him an egotist. And Chigiri says that he is right, and also says that they have Isagi, which is kind of cool. Bachira then looks fired up as he thinks that things are just getting started. Isagi tells them that this is good, and after that, he takes a deep breath and tells Blue Lock not to panic. And he also tells himself not to panic, and for both of them to keep on giving their best to secure victory. With that, we see them starting the game back on with Isagi passing to Rin. The commentators ask whether Japan will make a counterattack and say that Isagi and Rin are passing back and forth and charging up the middle, which they sure did, as they even got behind Loki. But just as they were destroying the France team, Charles comes by and tells Rin that he saw that in their first game against Nigeria, he bumped into Rin and tells him that he and Isagi will make their way up and then make it so either of them could be the finisher. Asking if he isn't right, Rin is just a bit shocked to see Charles here, but he doesn't say anything and is just silent. But just then, someone from the France teams who's called Bats comes by, and he looks super cool, and Charles tells him to box Rin in, and he has a huge smirk as he says that. However, Rin is just calm and collected as he looks to the side and tells Charles that they have already worked around this, and he passes the ball. Charles looks super surprised and shocked as he can't believe it, before saying that Rin passed to the right side, and he then tells the France team to watch out for the speedster. But come on, this is Chigiri we are talking about, so there's no way that anyone could take this goat down, and he gets to the ball first and says that they can go fast too, and after that, he looks like he means business as he passes a direct cross into the box, or at least close by it. We then see Rio, who calls it a good tempo and calls Chigiri princess, and with that, he jumps high up into the air and says, "Nice groove." After that, we see someone who I'm pretty sure is called Gabin, but he screams to someone else called Hermes, not let him shoot. We then see the center back from France, who is called Hermes, and he says that this is as expected, but after that we get back to Rio, who tells Hermes that he has got him as he's starting to go into his copy mode, and this time, he decides to go for Kunigami, which is sick since I'm pretty sure that this is the first time that he has ever copied. Kunigami, Gabin, looks super shocked as he asks about what's going on, and says that he's setting up a shot instead of shooting, and after that we see that the ball went to Isagi. And also, while on this topic, this copy from Rio is the same head pass that Kunigami did in the PXG game, I'm pretty sure anyway. Isagi then gets a light smirk, as firstly his meta vision eyes come out, and also his pieces start to get active. After that, he tells Rio that he has a nice groove, but just when everything seemed to go so smoothly, it just had to go downhill, as we see Hugo, who comes right by Isagi and puts his entire arm out right in front of him, and admits that Blue Lock actually has a good team. After that, we see Isagi, who doesn't seem like he can understand what is going on as he looks shocked, but Hugo tries to drag him closer and away from the ball, while telling Isagi that his two-gun volley only works when he's squaring off with an opponent and can feint in either direction, making his shot unpredictable. But if one were to charge him and close that gap, then his movements could be totally nullified. Isagi looks extremely annoyed, but we then see Hugo's dead eyes as they are completely blank, and he tells Isagi that his weapon can be crushed by logic. Isagi looks back in awe and says that Hugo ran a simulation using his movements as data. After that, the ball finally gets over to Isagi, and Isagi tries to do his best to keep it by him. After that, Hugo tells him that the backwards volley that he did during the Nigeria match can also be nullified through contact. But just when Hugo thinks that he's got Isagi where he wants him to, Rin comes by and screams Isagi's name. We also have Karasu by the side, who tells Isagi to pass and that he's free. Isagi then looks super happy as he thanks them, but suddenly, we can see that Karasu and Rin both get blocked by other players, and Hugo then continues his little rant, as he says that if they block his helpers, then he has nowhere to pass to. He continues, and says that if they manage to crush Isagi, then Blue Lock is dead in the water. However, hearing Hugo talk that much nonsense and shit about Blue Lock understandably makes Isagi a bit mad, as he turns around and tells Hugo to be silent, and calls him a logical asshole, telling him that he has made it this far by devouring arrogant creeps like him. Isagi is trying to hold Hugo off, as his eyes then starts to burn with aura, and he tells Hugo that he's going to risk it all to be number one. But before Isagi is even able to finish that sentence, Hugo cuts him off, and with a creepy and dark tone, he tells Isagi that he's more suitable to be number two, which is honestly so insanely wild, but also coldly to say. Anyway, Isagi is completely shocked by that, but just then, Hugo goes and just casually steals away the ball from Isagi, and he also asks Isagi if he believes in destiny, and with that, he starts to run away super coldly with the ball. Meanwhile, Isagi looks back towards him, and he looks super pissed off. We see Hugo starting to sprint insanely with the ball, as he in the previous chapter stole it from Isagi, just as in that chapter Hugo asks Isagi if he believes in destiny. Isagi, however, is too focused on the ball, and he doesn't have time to answer Hugo's questions. That's also why Hugo decides to just talk to himself like a crazy person, and says that he will enlighten Isagi, telling him that there's nothing fantastical or spiritual about the logic of destiny. With that said, Hugo fires off a pretty nasty pass towards up on the pitch. It even passes by both Rin and Karasu with no issue at all. The commentators are ecstatic about this, as they scream that this is wild, and that France's Hugo has blasted it right to the front line. It's a counter pass. Karasu looks back at the pass and looks super annoyed as he says that it's heading right to Loki. But then, in the bottom, we see a shoe coming into the panel, and they are saying that this is the spot, asking if that isn't right and calling Loki Wunderkind. And after that we see that it's the GOAT Nico who looks super dope, as he has just stolen the ball from, well, the best under 20 player in the world. After that, Nico gets his eye out of his hair and says that when it was stolen from Isagi, this was the most dangerous spot. Loki looks at him, and actually, it doesn't sound like he is bothered at all, as he just says, well. This is pretty funny though, as it feels like Loki isn't even taking this match seriously, and honestly, he shouldn't as they are currently in the lead. Anyway, Isagi, who saw this, gets hype right away as he screams towards Nico that it was a good job. We then also see Hugo, who says that it wasn't that bad, and praise from Hugo does seem very rare. After that, Nico thinks that he just has to clear the ball, which he does, and clearing the ball basically just means shooting it high up in the pitch. After that, we get into his mastermind where he thinks that when an opponent has a way to keep Isagi from shooting, Blue Lock can change attack patterns. He then looks serious as he takes a deep breath and says that when their calculated team design has been seen through, they will sting them with unpredictable solo skills. And he also tells Bachira, who got the ball, to pierce their defense and calling him Hornet. And you guys already know it, as Bachira does just that as the ball lands at his feet with no problem at all. And then he starts it off with embarrassing bats as he makes an awesome dribble behind him. However, suddenly and shockingly a player goes right in front of him. He says that there he is, which means that he has most likely anticipated Bachira. We then learn that he is called Camus and that he is a right wing. After that, he singles Bachira to go to him, and he tells Bachira to just try him and calls him Little Zephyr, which isn't that kind of cold anyway. Bachira does seem a bit hesitant, but he also seems super excited as he says that it's time to sting. After that, he starts to go at Camus right away, and it does look like he managed to get behind him without any trouble at all. But suddenly Camus puts his hand on Bachira's chest, which makes him freeze. We see that Bachira is really shocked, and he lets out a quick sigh before thinking that Camus matched his dribble tempo and altered his pace to follow, explaining that this is clearly a guy who studied his style so that he could cover him specifically. We see Bachira continuing to try his best to get behind Camus, but he is really struggling. Camus tells him that he is way too predictable and once again calls him Little Zephyr. Bachira just gets a little smirk on himself as he tells Camus to just be silent already and calls him Windbag. After that, we see a furious player running behind him, and Bachira says that in that case, then Chigiri is up as Bachira passes him the ball, which leaves Camus a bit shocked. Chigiri then catches it without any trouble at all, and he says that he is on it. He looks super determined as he says that he will use his speed to break through, but while he is running out of nowhere, another player comes right by him, and it isn't even Loki, as it's someone totally new who asks Chigiri if he is sure. He tells Chigiri that it's not gonna happen, and that there is no way that he will let him through. Chigiri just looks at him totally mind-blown, and he questions to himself how this player can be so insanely fast. After that, we learn that he is called Leiden and is the left wing for France. After that, we move to our poster boy, and the GOAT, Isagi, who currently looks pretty shocked, says that he's fast enough to cover Chigiri during a solo sprint, saying that the same thing happened to him and Bachira. He looks serious as he says that all the tricks up their sleeves have been logically predicted and dealt with by France, explaining that in every aspect, they have the upper hand. After that, mind you guys that this is still mid-game, and Hugo just casually goes and pats Isagi on his back. He tells Isagi Destiny, and Isagi is super shocked to just see Hugo chilling and talking to him. Hugo, however, continues and says that destiny comes down to your suitability. He looks serious as he always does, and he says that physique, personality, and talent, these things determine your basic abilities the moment you're born into this world, saying that, in other words, from the moment they're born, people aren't equal, which yeah, sucks to hear, but it is kind of true, unfortunately. However, Hugo is far from his conclusion, so he continues and says that each being has a suitable way of life, explaining that horses can run fast, birds can fly, and creatures just need to live in accordance with nature. Only humans are unnatural. By the way, I just want to remind you guys that Chigiri is legit fighting for his life while this is going down. Anyway, Hugo explains that humans chase after unattainable dreams, create pointless conflict and despair, and inflate their egos far past reality. Someone without aptitude can never defeat someone who has it. He looks at Isagi intensely and says that it doesn't mean that you shouldn't dream, but it means not dream beyond yourself. He says that if you saw a lion trying to fly, anyone would think it was foolish, explaining that it's better to just live naturally, and if everyone were to live in accordance with their suitability, the whole world would be happier and more efficient. It just means to follow your destiny at the cellular level, telling Isagi that this is his philosophy. With that, he starts to look super manic and intense as he says that it's the suitable destiny theory. Isagi, however, is so fed up with Hugo's bullshit and all of that, and he looks back at Hugo super angry and tells him so what. He has his meta vision out and ready as he tells Hugo that he says that Isagi doesn't have the talent to be a strike, or that his specs make him more suitable to be a midfielder, telling him straight up that all of that is painfully obvious to him already. Hugo then looks at him and asks him, then why does he persist in living so unsuitably? With that, Chigiri also sends the ball towards Isagi, and Isagi gets the ball and passes it forward while telling Hugo that Blue Lock taught him that you can rewrite your destiny with your ego, which firstly just goes so insanely hard. But this pass as well, It just looks super cold with Isagi's puzzle pieces flying around everywhere. However, you might be wonder who the ball is going to. Well, we see a emo-looking player who tells Isagi to leave it to him, and it's of course Rin who gets the ball, and he looks super fired up as he says that he is going to obliterate them and their destiny. Loki then dashes in front of him and tells him that destiny isn't something so easily change, and he has a smile on himself. With that, we get back into the game where we spot a super fired up and ready Rin, whose aura is just going wild around him as he is running with the ball. Up in front of him, it's Loki who just has a smile on himself, which I always find super funny as it just feels like he isn't taking it seriously in the slightest. Anyway, we see the ball down on the pitch, but then suddenly it goes right in between Loki's legs, making a nutmeg. By the way, this nutmeg that Rin did looks awfully similar to what Sei did to Rin in the U20 match, and also their flashback, which is a nice touch. But honestly, Rin is really on fire now. And while I would like to continue and say that he goes on and scores, it's not that simple yet, as Loki looks behind him, and then he stomps his foot down into the ground before taking off, and then in the next panel, he is already right by Rin, and is battling with him, still having that cheeky grin on himself, showing that this is basically just kindergarten football for him. Rin, however, isn't smiling in the slightest, as he genuinely looks mad, which rightfully so, but he then kind of stops and slaps away Loki's hand, and they go into this really sick-looking stand, off where the air pressure from the two of them even started to send waves. Anyway, Loki right here actually looks a bit lost, but that's when we can see that Rin has spotted a hole in their defense, and there is a line towards the goal. Rin is, of course, able to see it extremely clearly, and he right away gets himself into shooting position and starts to pull his leg back. But Loki is just as fast on it as he locks in, and he has lightning coming from his eyes as he starts to advance towards Rin. Loki is able to somewhat catch up to Rin, and he puts his hand on him to get his center of gravity a bit unbalanced. But even with that, Rin doesn't stop there, as he still gets away with the shot. The shot is actually looking super good until Hugo comes right by and decides to put a stop to the fun, as he makes some sort of karate move as he jumps up into the sky and is able to deflect the ball using his heel. And he has a stone-cold facial expression as he does that and looks right into Rin's face. Rin looks back at him, but this time with a super annoyed face, as he just lets out a sigh, as he is able to see the ball going out of bounds. The commentators are loving this though, as we can see them screaming with all that they can, and saying that this was so close. They explain that Hugo's super block keeps France from conceding a goal. The Japan fans are in shambles as they are witnessing this, and they can do nothing but just scream. We then move over to our favorite poster boy, Isagi, who takes a deep breath before he lets out a bit of an awkward laugh. He looks at Hugo, who has just gotten back onto the ground, and he wonders to himself if this is even for real. He wonders if it could be that even that just now was all just predicted. Isagi looks genuinely confused and stunned as he thinks that reading Rin's trait of wanting to shoot while colliding, Loki limited the shot course, and then Hugo came in and blocked it. However, Isagi then remembered that it's not just that, but also that the tactics that Blue Lock prepared, as well as all of their individual abilities, everything has been logically understood and grasped, thinking that talents placed in the right place bring out a 100% performance and an aptitude-based elite collective. After that, it gets super dark around Isagi as he starts to dig deeper into his thoughts and wonders to himself if they can even win against France. Just then, when Isagi is in his deepest despair, Hugo decides to invite himself to this conversation, and he says that Blue Lock actually are pretty strong. He then takes his hand through his hair, trying to be that kind of mysterious anime villain type, as he continues and says that if you take the diligent collective-minded culture of Japanese football and mix it with the individualistic philosophy of everyone aiming to be the world's best striker, and create a hybrid team that takes the best of both the collective and the individual. Hugo then goes over to talk about their coach and explains that he is an excellent individual who has made that experiment a success, but he then starts to look serious, and his eyes goes pitch dark as he tells Isagi that this is as far as it goes. He says that it's 66% talent and 33% environment, and the last 1%, it's of course luck. He tells Isagi that these are the ratios of the elements that decide a match, or at least that's what Hugo personally believes. And then in Blue Lock's case, it's a team that's been barely winning by Isagi pulling in that last % of luck, asking if that isn't true. Isagi just looks super confused and mind-blown, but Hugo says that if they won't let a situation where that luck can happen, then this is the ultimate way to crush Blue Lock. Isagi then looks super annoyed as he tells Hugo to just try it and calls him a big talking jerk. However, he kind of fell right into Hugo's trap, as he tells him that this quick irritation and snapping back at him is proof that he was in the right spot. Isagi then looks annoyed, as he has just been rage baited by Hugo to confess it, and after that he decides to just stay silent, Hugo then takes his finger and tells him that on top of all that, his team has a serious Isagi dependency. After that, we get this super dope looking panel where Isagi is almost chained to Blue Lock, and Hugo explains that the Japanese team is currently growing on the premise of Isagi's endless new ideas. In other words, paradoxically, he is not allowed to stop thinking and evolving. He tells Isagi, with a serious tone, that if Isagi stops growing, then the team will ultimately collapse, telling him that the heavy pressure is creating impatience within him, and that makes him play easy to predict and easy to crush. And right, here he is also referring to when Hugo was able to steal the ball from Isagi. Hugo continues to look intensely at Isagi as he tells him that, besides, at the point where he is feeling pressure in situation, he isn't fit to be number one. Hearing this really makes Isagi get into a spiral of destruction, or that's what it looks like, at least as he looks crushed. And Hugo explains that because if he were the number one, then he should be able to joyfully enjoy this moment where he is the center of the world, asking if he isn't right once again. And Hugo does have a lot of merit to what he is saying right here, and with that in the back of our minds, we do know how Isagi has been struggling with the thought of him being number one, and how the burden is lying right on his shoulders. Hugo then points to Loki, and tells Isagi that in that regard, Loki is the perfect fit, saying that he is born with the world's best physical abilities, and never doubting that he will become the world's best striker, continuing to glaze him, and saying that his mind and body are in perfect sync with his aptitude, and that he is a natural-born number one. Hugo isn't done, and far from it, as he reveals that he is going to be the one to produce that, looking right at Isagi and telling him that he is going to see a view that couldn't be reached alone, and that he wants to become the world's number two. And hearing that leaves Isagi actually speechless, which I don't blame him for, because hearing someone say that feels a bit weird. But Hugo tells Isagi that him out of all people should understand. Hugo then starts to burn with aura, as he says that he doesn't mean second place, but that he is instead talking about overseeing and manipulating the organization from the second highest spot, being the one who understands the number one better than anyone else. Basically, just an equal being. After this, we get this honestly mind-blowing and insane-looking panel with Hugo's aura going through the roof, and he looks insane as he tells Isagi to come and be the number two. Hearing this, it makes Isagi's whole world start to freeze as he can't believe what it is that he just heard. Hugo continues to stare him down and tells him that if he lives out his destiny as the number two, then Blue Lock can still become stronger, but if Isagi keeps chasing the dream of becoming the world's number one striker, then Blue Lock will be destroyed. With that, we see Bachira, who is taking the corner kick, and this I'm super excited for as it feels like it has been so long, or if this might even be the first corner kick we have seen. This was something that I wished that they would do more of. However, we then see Loki and Rin both still being at each other's neck. Meanwhile, Karasu is looking super serious and ready to do something big. Meanwhile, Isagi is looking super angry and furious due to what Hugo just said. However, under him we can see Hugo, who looks right at Isagi, and he once again tells him that if you keep striving to be the world's best striker, then it will lead to Blue Lock being annihilated here, which is a huge aura thing to just throw out and say. But anyway, we see Bachira's aura starts to flare up, but we also see Isagi's metavision mode getting active and ready as he in his head tells Hugo to just be silent, and if he thinks that he can outwit them, then just go ahead and try. Just then, while the players are rushing around in the box area, Bachira gets a smirk as he doesn't do a simple cross in, no of course, not, as he instead leaves everyone shocked, as he instead does a side pass, which leaves Charles a bit puzzled and questioning what he is up to. After that, we get to the France goalkeeper, who is called Renoir, who, just to remind you guys, he was trash in the Neo-Egoist League games. But anyway, he tells them that it's not a simple cross, but instead saying that it's a short corner, which I'm so glad that he said, because otherwise the France players would have had no idea. Anyway, the ball sent by Bachira goes to the sadist Hiyori, who gets it right by his feet, and he looks fired up as he tells them to run the signal play. With that, both Rin and Isagi starts to get active and trying to break free from everyone. We then move back to Renoir, who screams that they are up to something and for them all to cover their marks. Just then, however, Loki decides to ignore that and leaves his mark, which in this case is Rin, and he dashes right to Hiyori at insane speed. However, is it too late? Maybe because Hiyori is already going into a crossing position. But we then see that Loki did manage to get there in time, but it was just the small little detail that he was absolutely tricked by Hiyori, who, instead of crossing it, drags the ball to his right and tells him that he was too late, which is super cold to say to the fastest character in the series, by the way. Anyway, we then see Hiyori almost lobbing the ball behind Loki and towards Bachira, who had snuck up behind Loki. Bachira gets it and looks super fired up as he says totes, which, yeah, I have no clue what that bro is on sometimes. We then move back to Renoir, who, it's actually insane how he has gotten more screen time than some of the Blue Lock players in this match anyway. We move into his head as he says that it's Bachira again. He looks at the incoming monster closely and notes that he is right by the line, but that he won't let him make a close-up shot, which is kind of a respect moment since Renoir is showing us that he is standing on straight business. However, as Bachira just gets closer to him, he then gets that face expression, like that he is up to something, as he then says that this, when he does something cool, and something cool, it sure is as he passes the ball to his right, instead of trying to do something by himself. Renoir right away looks where the ball is heading, and he is also kind of shocked that Bachira decided to go for a pass away from the goal. But just then we see that the ball was going to the chameleon Rio, who compliments Bachira's pass as he says that he is wide open. But after that, he can feel a grubby and huge hand going across his chest, and it's none other than Hugo, who we need a cool nickname for fast. But anyway, he asks Rio if he really is wide open, as he has him kind of grabbed. After that, Hugo's eyes start to spin like some sort of vortex, as he tells Rio that there is no shooting for him, and calls him a copy machine. Rio, right in an instant, looks super crushed, like their whole plan has fallen into shambles. But then, after tricking Hugo for a little while, he gets a super huge grin as he laughs and asks him what he means by shooting, and that it's not even the plan. After that, we see that Rio made a pretend shot at the ground and let the ball go past him all the way back to someone else. Renoir is quickly looking at it intensely as he wonders just why Rio decided to ignore the ball. Hugo also looks back in a second, and someone asks him if he wasn't going to crush him with logic. After that, we see that it's Isagi who is going right to the ball and calls Hugo a second best bastard. With that, we also see his puzzle pieces going absolutely wild all around him. We then get a close-up of his face where he looks super ready and he says that this is his, but suddenly someone comes crashing right into his body and tells him that it isn't his just yet. Isagi is super shocked and caught off guard, but after that, we learn that it's Charles who tells him that the contrarians are here, and he looks so sick. We then see Isagi looking back at Charles and letting out a sort of sigh towards him. After that, Charles decides that it's his time to start and yap. So he says that whenever Blue Lock uses a pattern that they don't know, they keep a close watch on the most annoying spot. By that, he means where Isagi is, explaining to Isagi that that's his job. Isagi is really shocked by all of this, as in his head he says that there is no way, and that they ruined their first signal play. However, just then, we can see that not all the hope is lost just yet, as right by Isagi, we spot Rin, who calls out to him and tells him to pass it. Looks super fierce and serious as he tells him to come over here. But as he looks at Rin, he thinks about Hugo's words as he told Isagi that if he embraces his destiny as second best, then Blue Lock can get even stronger. Just then, we move back to Isagi, who looks super manic, and something we haven't seen him like for a while, as he then tells Hugo in his head to just keep his mouth shut, and that he is going to live as number one. And with that, he sends away the ball even with Charles trying his best to stop him. We even see Charles who looks super shocked by this. Under this we can see Rin, who looks absolutely furious at Isagi. Meanwhile, we see Karasu for a quick second, whose eyes are glued onto the ball, and Bachira, who is just the same as Karasu. However, he encourages the ball and tells it to go. We then see the ball going past two of the PXG players and heading right towards the goal. But then somehow, as I'm lost for words, we see Renoir, who legit catches the ball in the last second with both his hands. Renoir looks super dope as he explains that this is the only place that it could have gone. By him, we see Isagi, who looks to be frozen in shock by all of this. The commentators are also just lost for words as they, with all that they can, scream that he stopped it. We also see the Japanese crowd being super mad and frustrated by this. After that, we move to Isagi, who is just trying to process it. But while doing it, Hugo walks by and tells him if he doesn't see it, telling him that without his two-gun volley or his direct shot, he is below an average striker, which is an insane thing and just an insane blow to Isagi. He continues as he tells Isagi that, at this rate, Blue Lock will lose because of him. Isagi then finally looks back at Hugo, who straight up tells him that it's time to wake up, explaining to him that he as well can change. After that, he starts to aura farm like crazy as he puts his hand out to Isagi, and his aura is through the roof as he tells him to know his place and obey his destiny, which sounds so crazy. We also have Loki right by him, who has lightning in his eyes, which is super dope. We then move to Isagi, who has no idea what to say, as he just looks stunned. Under him, it's his best buddy Bachira, who thinks that there is no way. Under Bachira, it's Hiyori, who wonders to himself what they are going to do now. We then have Rin, who lets out a little annoyance sound towards Isagi, and we also have Ego under him. However, it seems like the thing that is going through all of their heads is that they can no longer use Isagi. However, someone who I doubt is sharing that thought is Karasu, who we can see is starting to fire up, and he looks super ready as he says, "Suitability and destiny." We then get to his eyes, which looks insane. Like, I don't know if we have ever seen Karasu look this dope. But he then says, "The world's best second best." And this is crazy because there is so many ways he could be interpreting it. We get right back into it, where we see Renoir, who previously stopped Isagi's shot, and he now is holding the ball in his hand, getting ready to throw it out. We see Ryu, who looks at this and says that this is bad. Aiku also comments, but is a bit more serious as he screams out to everyone that he's making a long throw counter. And because of that, he instructs all of the Blue Lock players to move back. We then move to Rio, who seems to see something else as he screams to everyone that they need to watch out for Loki. And we then see Loki sprinting with everything that he can in the next panel. And not long after, Renoir actually throws the ball towards him, and we see him dashing behind both Ryu and Rin in a nanosecond. We then move to Henri on the bench, and she gets up and looks to be super worried as she screams Ego's name. She tells him that they keep anticipating their actions and explains that nothing is working anymore. She then faces Ego and asks him if he has a plan in mind already and if they should swap out their players. However, to our surprise, we see Ego just intensely watching the pitch while saying nothing at all. After that, the ball goes right to Loki, who traps it, and he gets a serious look on his face as he then goes one gear up and makes an awesome sprint forward, which leaves Hiyori right in the dust. But then we see the future #1 of Blue Lock and the best player ever, Chigiri, who tells Loki to wait up and calls him a speed freak, which sounds a bit rich coming from Chigiri, but since he is the GOAT, we overlook it. Anyway, we then see him grabbing a hold of Loki and trying to have a speed face-off with him. They run side by side, and Chigiri seems to be doing pretty decently against him, as he in his head says that he won't let Loki run free. They keep their pace battle, but then Chigiri notices something crucial, and he says that Loki isn't just fast, but that he is also pushing right through him, and that makes him start to grind his teeth out of frustration. After that, he thinks that Loki is going to be able to get past him, but just then something shocking happens as Karasu comes in and sweeps away the ball from Loki, which leaves Loki looking super confused. Chigiri, on the other hand, looks to be ecstatic as he tells Karasu, "Good job," and Karasu gets ready with the ball as he tells him likewise and calls him Princess. After that, we get into his huge and outstanding brain as he thinks that thanks to Chigiri racing him, Karasu was able to parse Loki's dribble rhythm and managed to cut in just before him. We then spot him looking super focused as he takes a deep breath before looking ahead on the pitch and wondering to himself just what he should do now. He thinks that he should assume that they can't rely on Isagi anymore, and hearing that it's just something that I still can't really believe. We then see Charles, who looks with big eyes towards Karasu, and he looks super ready as he further confirms it by telling him to come on. We also see a quick panel of Hugo just eyeing him down a bit. With all of that in mind, Karasu starts to look serious and a bit worried as he thinks to himself that at this rate they will just keep reading and slowly crush them. With that in mind, he knows that he can't just sit there and wait, and knows that he has to act on his own, which is something that he does as he starts to run forward and just check out that aura around him like that's insane. Anyway, we then move all the way to the useless Isagi. Before you Isagi Glazers attack me, I'm also an Isagi Glazer, so calm down anyway. Isagi thinks back to Hugo telling him to know his place and to obey his destiny. Isagi then curses Hugo out because, due to him saying that he has sadly realized the harsh truth, which is nothing shorter than that his abilities just aren't effective anymore. We then see him starting to get more and more furious, as his puzzle pieces start to wither away into thin air as he thinks about Hugo's second saying, and that he should live as the second best. Isagi then decides to take a moment and look around on the pitch, and he says that if he stops worrying about scoring his own goals and focuses on helping the team win, then they could probably evolve. He looks towards Hugo and admits that it might be the best way for them to defeat France, who is currently the king of the soccer world, but he then starts to think deeper about it and questions if that would really be the way of Blue Lock, which we of course know that it wouldn't, and with that in mind, he starts to run on the pitch, and he screams towards Karasu that he is free over here. Isagi continues as he thinks that he is going to be the world's best striker, and that the ego of his will never waver, and we then see him looking extremely fired up as he tells Karasu with a burning desire that he will make it happen. Karasu sees him but just calls him a dumbass, which to be honest is pretty funny. But anyway, he tells him that acting on a whim isn't going to work against this France team. He sees Isagi coming closer to him and thinks that if they keep on relying on him, then Blue Lock is going to die right here, which is kind of harsh, but it is true. With that in mind though, he starts to use his eyes and look around as he then tells himself to think of something and that they have to change. After that, we get this. not even joking, but at least top 5 manga panels of the entire manga, as we spot Karasu being completely devoured and looking like a real crow, as he has wings and claws and everything. Like, truly, this is just phenomenal. Like, at first glance, I could have sworn that this was Da Vinci's doing, but it's just the Blue Lock authors cooking. Like, there's no tomorrow anyway. While Karasu is aura farming, he is actually thinking about something serious and not just trying to look cool. As he says that, for Blue Lock's sake, he will change. Which, guys, do you just hear that? Like, Karasu is truly a real team player. Now, am I glazing him so much mainly because of this outstanding panel? And to that, I would just say that, of course I am, because how could I not? Anyway, we then see his eyes, which is filled with a blank slate and kind of aura. As he says that, he will become the second best, which was just what Hugo was going on about, but instead for Isagi, anyway. Moving back to Karasu, who currently is the flashiest man in the game. As him alongside his new crow wings, he makes a really sick-looking dribble behind the France player Bats. Hugo sees this, and he looks to be visibly shocked by that. Under him, we also have Charles, who just like Hugo is having trouble getting what is happening. To Charles's right, it's Isagi, who looks to be the most shocked out of all of them, as he thinks that Karasu used him as bait to dribble past. He then thinks about it some more, and wonders if Karasu is really thinking about going to score on his own. After that, he says that they didn't practice a pattern like this, and I still don't get why he is so worried about following their previous plan, since he knows very well how that hasn't been working, and it feels like letting them play of instinct and vibes would be the best, and it's usually those times where they get their new awakenings. Anyway. Isagi then looks towards Karasu intensely, and he sees his eyes, which are almost burning up with aura, and he wonders just what it is that Karasu is thinking. After that, we move to Charles, who is super confused, and he tells Karasu that his whole vibe has changed. We then see the goalkeeper, Renoir, again, and he calls out to the team that Blue Lock is once again on the attack, and tells them to be ready and to watch out for a shot. However, we then leave him and head to Karasu, who is running with the ball, and he thinks to himself that he isn't going to shoot. And he is far from it actually, as he then calls him a moron as he explains that he has to stop thinking of himself as a striker. His crow feathers are going around him, and he thinks that he needs to erase all needless information, and as he looks out to the pitch, he realizes that he needs to use himself as second best, and then from that devise a new plan. We then see the panel at the bottom, where his eyes are once again going into this new kind of like emotionless and blank state, as he says that he is going to make them win, since he is now in control. He looks at Isagi, Chigiri and Rin, however, as he sees them, and more importantly, where they are currently positioned. He says that they are no good at all. With that in mind, he knows that he has to do something differently. So he then decides to almost end us with yet another amazing panel where he puts out his arm, which isn't even an arm anymore, as it's a whole claw, which looks insane, like whatever the authors are currently smoking on. I'm gonna have to get some of it. Anyway, moving on from that, Karasu says that right now, the one most suitable for a goal is an extraordinary striker, which that saying is just sick as well. But yeah, Karasu then gets away with a pass-up on the pitch, and it goes past both Rin and Bachira, and both of them looks at it pretty shocked. However, we then see Karasu, who looks intensely and super serious, as he says that he needs someone. Now who is that Karasu could possibly be needing in this intense moment? Well, it's none other than the goat Hiyori, who traps it flawlessly. Karasu's eyes start to burn the exact minute that Hiyori traps the ball, and he tells him to let's go, and calls him a major sadist. We then see that Hiyori's eyes have also started to glow just like Karasu's, and he tells him, Roger that, and calls him a frenemy, and that is just so cold as well, where we see Hiyori, who has gotten the ball to his feet by Karasu. The text says that he sent it over to the left side and that the ball goes to Hiyori. After that, we get a close-up panel of his face where he starts to look pretty locked in, but moving under it, we can see his meta-vision eyes beginning to sneak out and get fired up as he thinks that he was thinking the same thing as Karasu just now. He continues and thinks that the attack patterns that start with Isagi are dead in the water. We then see Hiyori almost flying up on the pitch as he looks extremely fast, and Karasu keeps a close watch on him. Back to Hiyori, who says that somebody's got to create a new pattern, and right now, in this intense and unpredictable moment, they are the only ones who can manage to do it. We then see Renoir screaming out that Hiyori is free and asks his team to go and cover him right away. We then see someone who I doubt even has a name yet, but he tells Renoir that he is on it. However, it turns out that he is just pretty trash as Hiyori deals with him, like if he were just air as he calls him too slow as he cuts past. After that, he starts to look towards the goal while thinking that he needs to aim for a shot. But just then, two of the France players magically teleport right in front of him, and they are here to set a stop to the furious Hiyori. But as that happens, we see him, and after that with a dark tone, he just says no, and that he doesn't have a course yet. That's why he decides to pass to Karasu, who is just coming to his side. The France players seem to be in shock as they say that Hiyori is doing another side pass. Hiyori, on the other hand, thinks that this is great. He looks super serious as he explains that this threw off their defensive line, and then, in his head, he tells Karasu to just go ahead and shoot the ball now. We then move over to the crow himself, who traps the ball, and he already has a player right on his tail, which he is already battling with, but we then see him looking super mad. But to our surprise, it's not due to the France player being right on him, but instead, because Hiyori passed him. Karasu calls him a dumbass and asks him why he didn't shoot it himself, and calls him this time a major sadist. After that, we see some flashbacks to their time in the youth team together, and Karasu thinks that he knows that his talent as a striker is best of all, due to them, well, obviously being on the same youth team, explaining that Hiyori's conflicted feelings about soccer and his resignation and how much he changed here in Blue Lock, as he says that last part. We also see a ton of moments from the Neo Egoist League, and most of them from the Ubers match from the looks of it, where he decided to go his own path and become a full-on playmaker. Anyhow, our favorite crow of all time, he continues his speech and says that he has been watching him all along, and that's why he should know, as he says that we spot Karasu passing the ball back to Hiyori with a super dope looking pass, if I can say so myself. Anyway, Hiyori right off the bat gets visibly shocked by that, as he thinks that Karasu passed the ball back to him and also says his name. Karasu then thinks that with all of the things that he has already said in mind, this is why he can take this chance on him, because of his extraordinary shooting talent, which honestly, everyone should have their own Karasu who believes in themselves. Moving on, we see Hiyori, who now has the ball, but just then, both Rin and Isagi come running on his side, and both of them scream towards Hiyori, telling Hiyori to pass the ball. This makes Hiyori stall for a second, but it ends just as fast as the Karasu comes right by him, and he thinks that the idea came to him once he put everything into being the second best. Just then, he tells Hiyori with a very gritty, dark, and serious tone to just shoot the ball already. He continues and says that the path to victory lies in self-sacrifice. Just then, I kid you not, Karasu turns into a straight-up demon-looking creature as he looks insane, like you can just see his eyeballs slightly glowing out from his face. By the way, while this is going on, Karasu is acting like a tank or something, as he himself is holding back two of the French players, and how this man does it, like, I have no idea at all. After that, Karasu once again speaks up and tells Hiyori, or not even telling him, as it's more like he demands him to aim for his head. And just that as well, telling someone to aim for your own head is actually crazy. However, Hiyori just sees this as a win-win situation, as either he scores, or he will just hit Karasu right in his head, so his eyes start to burn up, as he says that he is trusting him, and calls him extraordinary. And with that out of the way, Hiyori decides to waste no time at all, as he sends the ball right at Karasu's head, which luckily, Karasu manages to dodge as he lowers his own head. But come on guys, once again, what is this for magically an outstanding panel, like Karasu legit has huge wings on his back? This surely has to be illegal, like, where is the referee? Anyway, we then see Gabin, who is like super confused about what is going on, as he explains that Karasu lowered his head at the last second to create a tiny shot course. We then move over to the crazy boy Charles, who is super caught off guard as he asks who the hell it was that said that they couldn't make goals without Isagi, and I guess that it was France's game plan all along to just shut down Isagi and then win. However, Blue Lock is much more than just that, even though Isagi still is the GOAT after all. We obviously also see Renoir trying his best to save the goal, but I'm guessing that his beginner's luck is over as he fails to stop the ball and it goes right into the back of the net, almost making a whole hole in the net due to sheer force of it. We then see the spectators being ecstatic over this as they scream out, and we then move over to the commentators as they scream goal over and over. We then see Hiyori and Karasu celebrating together, and Hiyori looks super happy. Meanwhile, Karasu is trying to stay nonchalant and aura farm. However, it looks like he is actually holding out his arms like an actual crow, which is cool. The commentators then continues as they say that with Hiyori and Karasu's trick shot, Blue Lock has tied the scores, which is such a good thing to hear. We then see Chigiri and Bachira being also super glad over this, as they scream and heads over to the two of them in an instant. We then see Isagi, who looks super in amazement as he breathes super heavily, before saying, alright, he thinks that they caught up, and that they now have a chance. But suddenly, his eyes starts to look confused or maybe more shocked, as while he looks at all of them, celebrating he wonders what it was that Karasu just did now, saying that it looked like he'd totally given up on scoring his own goal. We then get a close-up to his eyes as he starts to question if that is really okay, and if that doesn't go against everything that Blue Lock stands for, and he does have a real point in that. Just then, when Isagi's mind is a bit scattered, Hugo comes by and asks him if he sees, telling Isagi that even if it's not him, there's someone with the brains and talent to be second best. He then takes his hand like always, trying to really become the mysterious anime villain, but no matter how much he tries, he can never be the Goat Kaiser. Anyway, he continues and says that it's not bad, Blue Lock, saying that this is the destructive power of utter suitability. We then see Isagi, who just sighs at him, but Hugo doesn't even seem to acknowledge that, as he keeps on going and tells Isagi that there is one more thing. If he also started acting like a second best up on the front line, then Blue Lock could hold its own against France, and hear me out. That sounds so insane. Hugo doesn't stop there, as he tells Isagi that he holds the team's destiny in his hands, and that's a real burden. And we can clearly see that on Isagi's face as he starts to look super confused about what to do, as he just stands silent. But just then, when that happens, someone actually goes to grab his head, and that makes Isagi pull a really funny face. The player tells Isagi to just ignore him, explaining that their destiny is to devour each other to be the best. We then see that Rin isn't holding back at all, as he is really pulling Isagi's hair back while telling him that second best is so tepid. And honestly, I'm so on board with Rin, and I couldn't agree more. However, Isagi looks super, I don't even know the right word, but I guess like he's questioning everything, as he wonders to himself which way is the right way. We then get to the bench where we see Henri, who is super happy as she calls out to Igo, and tells him that they did it. She tells him that Karasu and Hiyori managed to create a new attack pattern, and that they still have a shot. Igo, however, is just silent before he tells Henri a straight up no. He then starts to look intense, as he says that he didn't expect this, and that he had no desire for this chemical reaction, and that's why Igo is the GOAT. Like, he is so cool. Henri, on the other hand, has no idea what he means as she just looks at him, confused. We then move back to Rin and Isagi, where Rin lets Isagi's hair go, and Isagi is left by himself, and he starts to wonder about just what he should believe in. After that, we see Karasu, Hiyori, Rin, Hugo, and Igo all behind him. Meanwhile, he turns into a really dark shadow as he questions just what it is that is happening in Blue Lock. We then get to the commentators, who say that Blue Lock Japan has caught up, explaining that this white-hot match is just getting started. Now, while that is going on, and everyone seems to be super happy, Isagi seems to be a bit concerned over all of this, as he looks confused and lost. He wonders to himself just what it is that is happening in Blue Lock right now, wondering about where this team is trying to go. After that, he stands in the middle of the pitch completely alone, and it gets silent around him as he can just question what it is that he should believe in. He looks over to Igo, who it looks like is looking towards Isagi himself, and Isagi says his name. Just then, Karasu comes by and calls out to Isagi, which sends Isagi back into reality real quick. Karasu looks super sweet as he puts out his hand and tells Isagi that they should keep on using this method. Now Isagi is just at a loss for words as he says that, but Karasu says that they are covering him too heavily, so the plans that they practiced aren't going to work. He continues and says that he is going to focus on helping to set up shots like what he just did now. Then his sweet expression turns into a much more serious one, as he explains that he will figure out new ways to score goals without Isagi, telling him that it's the only way that they can possibly beat France, and asking if he isn't right. Isagi looks at him, still a bit lost, as he just says, sure. However, it isn't there that everything ends, as Isagi really locks himself into the conversation, as he asks Karasu if he is okay with throwing away his life as a striker. Hearing that seems to leave Karasu in awe this time around, as he firstly looks to be confused as he just asks Isagi what he means, saying that it isn't like he is throwing it away. Karasu goes deeper into it as he says that he knows for a fact that Isagi has done the same thing before, explaining that he does stuff like temporarily assist to help set them up to win. Isagi looks at him straight ahead and tells him that it's true and that he has done it before. Karasu then tells him that it's just the same thing that he himself did now, saying that if he wants to talk about life as a striker, then what about Gagamaru, who is currently playing goalkeeper, or all the guys playing defense, saying that none of them are strikers? Isagi right here is struggling to come up with a comeback to Karasu's argument, and says that it's just something about his new attitude that doesn't sit right with him. This makes Karasu extremely kind of disrespected, as he asks him what he means, saying that he can't just go and diss him if he can't even verbalize it. After that, he gets this awesome looking panel where he has an aura coming right off him with a bunch of feathers around him. He stands up with a phenomenal posture as he tells Isagi that, unlike what he is doing, at least he is trying to change for Blue Lock's sake. Hearing that sentence makes something tick in Isagi's brain, as it finally looks like he came up with something. After that, he tells Karasu to hold up, telling him that it's just that which has been bugging him. Karasu looks back and asks him what he means. Isagi then explains that he just said that he is doing it for Blue Lock's sake, anything besides playing soccer for themselves, telling him that this isn't the way of the egotist. We then see a small panel at the bottom where we have Karasu's eye, and it looks like he got super annoyed. We also see Hiyori, Bachira, and Chigiri looking over there as they start to wonder what it is that is going on, as they most likely started to overhear their conversation. Isagi then continues with his speech, as he says that all of them are aiming to be the world's best striker, explaining that Karasu deviated from that philosophy because of what Hugo said. Isagi then puts his hand on his chest and looks so insanely dope as he says that now he is prioritizing the team's victory as a second best, ending it by telling him that it's not the Blue Lock way. That whole speech makes Karasu look super angry and outright pissed off as it gets dark around him, and he tells him to then go on and score a goal, calling Isagi trash, which now I don't want to pick sides, but it's a bit unnecessary, I will admit. And honestly, I feel like Isagi agrees, as he is super caught off guard by that, as he doesn't even understand what he means with it. Karasu then is the one who gets into a deep speech, as he says that since he isn't effective as a striker, he is trying to change based on their opponent's opinion, asking Isagi what it is about that. He takes a deep breath as he asks him if it would be the Blue Lock way to let France kick their asses just for Isagi's sake. It then looks like Karasu's eyes really get lit with some sort of insane determination as he looks straight at Isagi deep into his eyes and tells him that it looks to him that the one spinning his wheels and acting like number one and trying to ruin Blue Lock is Isagi himself, also ending it by calling him an ordinary person, which, yeah, is not necessary at all, to be honest. Anyway, Isagi heard it, and it makes his entire world get flipped upside down as it gets blank in his mind. After that, he completely locks in, and he gets super close to Karasu as he screams right in his face that he is thinking about Blue Lock as well. Isagi screams so hard and gets so angry that his face veins even start to pop out, and he looks furious as he tells Karasu that he is working so hard and that he has been racking his brain about what he needs to do as the best in Blue Lock, continuing and about to talk more about Blue Lock. But Karasu then cuts him off and tells him that he just said it himself. Isagi just said that he did it for Blue Lock, and with that, he asks Isagi how in the world he is any different from him, and that makes Isagi get a real reality check, it looks like, as he doesn't know what to say anymore. But luckily, the captain of the team, Aiku, then arrives just in time as he breaks it up and puts his hand on Isagi's head and shakes it around a bit. He tells them that it's enough and tells both of them to just chill out. He starts to smile as he looks at them and explains that they are both right and asks what if they are trying to think about it all in another way, saying that there's no denying that Karasu's method got results and the egotistic philosophy Isagi's talking about is important too, so let's make use of both. He puts both of his hands together and says that they will fight with all that they have got while finding a new shape for Blue Lock to win. He then starts to smirk and gets a bit of a devious smile as he asks them how it sounds. Isagi sounds a bit hesitant, but he says sure, and Karasu says that it's fine by him, as he says that in any case it seems like it's time for Blue Lock to change. And as he says that, we can spot Ego sitting and chilling on the bench, and I wonder so extremely much about what is going through his mind at this exact point. We then move on to the France team, and Charles says that they caught up to them, and he says that it's super annoying by them. Loki adds onto the conversation as he says that he himself thinks that it will be more fun than shutting them out. Hugo, the dead-looking guy, adds on that he is on Loki's side, and that it sounds good, explaining that he will keep leading this field towards its destiny. And with that, the restart of the match is on, as Hugo passes the ball over to Loki on the side who catches it right away. Loki already has a steam of aura coming off his body, but to try and stop him, it's Rin who looks like he's about to enter his beast mode, and I believe that it can be his time to shine soon. Anyway, he tells Loki to just try it and calls him a perfectionist freak, telling Loki that he wants a goal so badly that he can't stand it anymore. With that, we see that the matchup between the two of them is beginning, and Loki responds to Rin's trash talk by telling him that he is the exact same and that he is also dying for a goal. We then get over to Isagi, who is currently in his own head. He thinks that they have settled on their strategy for now, but that they haven't solved the fundamental issue yet. We then get a close-up right to his face as he continues his inner monologue and says that the goal that Karasu and Hiyori made will be hard to use now that France is ready for it, explaining that its reproducibility is too low. He looks at the current battle between Loki and Rin and says that nothing will change unless he can make himself effective, but there's no way in hell that he will live as the second best. Just then, Hugo creeps up right behind Isagi, and he is actually like right in him, Almost he goes right to his ear and slightly whispers to Isagi that second best is just another kind of ego. Isagi is just in total awe, wondering why this creep is almost right by his face. He then looks to his side, where they catch each other's faces, and Hugo tells him that being the best isn't the only way to live. Isagi, however, can't even start to begin to wonder about what it is that Hugo is telling him, as he instead has to act quickly, so he gets some distance and slaps away Hugo's hand. Hugo then continues and tells him to listen up. He says that he will tell him about his ego as second best, and now that scene before was super weird, but I can't sit here and lie and say that the line just now wasn't super cold. Anyway, Isagi seems to be pretty confused and pissed off by Hugo's actions, which I really can't blame him for. He tells Isagi that he will explain to him about his ego as the second best, and Isagi just looks at him, while looking pretty annoyed at him. We then see a quick panel from the Loki and Rin duel, where Loki obviously was too afraid to face Rin, so he decided to chicken out and pass the ball towards Hugo, who traps it so sick, like always, and he then starts his lecture as he tells Isagi that he bets that he believes that the second best means someone who couldn't manage to become the best, asking Isagi if he isn't right. However, even though he asked him, he still doesn't give him any time to answer, as he then puts out his hand and tells him that it's not it at all, and Isagi just looks super confused as it sounds like Hugo is just yapping to himself. We then cut to a panel of ego, and Hugo tells Isagi that they have just been brainwashed by that bull, cut 4 eyes, to believe that they have to be the best, which I mean, that isn't something that you can argue with, as that's true, but is it really a bad thing though? Anyway, we then get back to Isagi, who looks super furious and mad as he tells Hugo to just be silent, and that he doesn't want to hear about his biased opinions anyway. But Hugo hits back with a serious blow as he tells Isagi that he is the one that is actually biased. As Hugo is playing around with the ball, he continues and says Isagi's name, and asks if he haven't ever looked at others and felt that they were wasting their talents. And just as Hugo said that, we can clearly see that it finally ticked inside Isagi's brain, as he, in an instant, thinks to Baru, Yukimiya, and Hiyori, who he has previously felt were wasting their potential and talent. We then see Hugo's eyes close up, and he looks serious as he tells Isagi that it has been like that for him for as long as he can remember. With that, we spot a younger-looking version of Hugo, where he is wondering why everyone is so ignorant of themselves, thinking that they want to do things they can't, and yearning for things outside their reach. And he explains that it really drives him crazy. We then move up to a slightly older Hugo, who is standing around in a field of gears, as he explains that when he sees humans failing because their talents and self-image are unaligned, it makes him want to correct their mechanisms, saying that he was naturally gifted with that sensitivity, and that it's something that he just can't seem to help at all. After that, we see him going up one gear, as he actually destroys Isagi with one of the coldest nutmegs ever. Like, this was serious for him. Anyway, as he did that, he explained that it's why whenever he meets people, he tells them that things will go better if you do this, or if you try this, then you can beat him. Another example is him telling someone that if you do this, then you will be more popular, and lastly, if you do this, then you will even become more loved. By the way, I just want to mention that while he was yapping a bunch, the nutmeg under Isagi was a pass towards Charles, just so that everyone is following. After that, we move over to Isagi, who every time we see him just looks angrier and angrier, as it looks like he wants to rip Hugo to pieces, while saying that it's all creepy as hell, and he calls him a self-centered meddling jerk. Hugo looks back at Isagi, and their eyes meet, as Hugo tells him that he is exactly right, explaining that he is just doing what he wants, so he doesn't mind if Isagi hates him, as he isn't doing it out of charity or out of spite. Continuing and saying that it's just that when his ideas cause someone to live more suitably, the world begins to turn anew. While he says that, we also see Charles, who gives back the ball to Hugo, and Hugo then does an insane trap with his chest as he jumps up and meets with the ball. It then gets dark around him, and he looks a bit more serious as he says that when people meet him, then their destinies change, and producing people like that is utterly fascinating. And guys, hear me out, from what Hugo is saying, I do really get him. I'm not going to lie here. Isagi then looks back at Hugo, and just then, he realizes something huge as he thinks to himself that Hugo might actually be kind of like himself. Isagi then thinks back to his conversation with Onatsu, and how Isagi pretty much said the same thing, and also changed Onatsu's destiny. We then get back to Hugo, who says that it makes life worth living, telling Isagi that he wants to learn why he was born, and why Hugo is actually making me such a huge fan of him in this chapter, like he is spitting these bars like he was some Greek philosopher. Like, honestly, just keep on cooking, bro. Anyway, he isn't just cooking with what he says, but also on the field, as we see him going up one gear as he begins to get away from Isagi. Ryo sees this and looks decently annoyed as he says that Hugo broke free from Isagi. Aiku, who is also eyeing this down, screams out in a nanosecond and tells everyone to watch for a pass. Lastly, we have the analytical crow, Karasu, who tells Aiku that he is already watching and calls him a dumbass. We then once again move back to Hugo, who, while running at top speed, says that his talent is suitable for changing others to make the world turn. So he has never once wanted to be a striker, but with that said, he wants to win the World Cup as the second best and as a midfielder. We then see Isagi on the side, who is doing everything in his power to try and get a bit closer to Hugo and just try to destroy the gap between them. But while he is stressing, Hugo looks to be calmer than ever as he asks Isagi if he knew that the world record for most times winning the World Cup is 3 times, explaining that Pele, the king of soccer, is the only one to hold that record. It's off topic right now, but I just love when the series mentions real-life players. I just think that it's so awesome. Anyway, back into the game where we see Loki, who is starting to smirk as he is in front of Hugo and tells him to just come on. But if Loki wasn't trouble enough, then Charles also appears behind Aiku and says that there's no way and that Hugo is going to pass over to him instead of Loki. But we then coldly get a close-up to Hugo's eye, which we can see is in the shape of a spinning gear, and that's sick, as it means that Hugo has an original metavision design, or that might be too much to say now, but that's what I believe and what it most likely is. Hugo then speaks up and says that it's exactly why he will win the World Cup 4 times, and that his ego is insane, just casually saying that he will win one of the hardest trophies to win in football, 4 times in a row, and we can see that his body has the ability to match that ego as he starts to emanate a bunch of spinning gears around him as he really locks in. Isagi just looks towards him in total disbelief. Meanwhile, Hugo then fires off not a pass, but instead a shot towards the goal, while saying that he will become one of humanity's legends. And the shot from Hugo goes right past both Charles and Loki, but also Aiku and Karasu, who can't do anything. Karasu even looks back in pure awe as he thinks that all the pass courses his teammates created were just decoys. We then see Gagamaru, who starts to jump towards the ball, while he himself was also surprised that Hugo was the one who took the shot. We then get a close-up panel to Isagi once again, as he is just in awe, as he thinks that Hugo's dream is huge, and that it's not about being the best or the second best. We then see the ball going past Gagamaru sadly, and right into the back of the net, which gives France their second goal of the match, and also the lead currently, which the France spectators seem to love as they scream out in pure happiness. Isagi, who is still just breathing heavily, thinks that his dream is more grandiose than him. He looks at Hugo and thinks that he is sharper than what he is, and his ego is even bigger than his own. And that last part is what shocked me the most, as we have found someone who can out-ego Isagi, and that's completely insane. After that, we first see that the first half is over since the referee blew his thing, which I forget what it's called in English, my bad. But after that, we see one of the most insane and mind-blowing panels we have ever gotten, as Hugo is legit half human and half some sort of machine here, as he then asks Isagi if he still hates the idea of the second best, which I'll admit and say that if I were Isagi, then I might even fold here, because after seeing Hugo score a goal like that, I would just be in total disbelief and shocked to my core. We then, however, move on to the bench where we see Hugo, who tells someone to get ready and that they are starting in the second half, and he then calls them his double jokers, and we then learn that it's both Baru and Shidu, which is completely insane, as we haven't seen these guys since the Neo-Egoist League, which feels like it has been ages. Also, just look at them. They look completely filled with bloodlust and pure fire in their eyes, as they are going to get ready to get out and wreak havoc. However, having them on the field at the same time is what leaves me really in awe, as it's just insane, and I can't see them working well together. However, if they somehow manage to work it out, then I will be blown away.